Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into a really high-stakes game of cat and mouse, the technological arms race kicked off by Russia's Zircon hypersonic missile. Now, the Kremlin called this thing invincible, a total game changer. But is it? We're going to unpack the strategy, what's really going on, and the super sophisticated defense being built to try and stop it. So let's just jump right in. I mean, think about that question for a second. How do you stop something moving that fast? It's the central challenge that has military planners all over the world losing sleep. We're talking about something moving more than twice as fast as a sniper's bullet. Your reaction time gets squeezed down to practically nothing, just minutes, maybe even seconds. It's a massive puzzle of physics, electronics, and strategy, all rolled into one. All right, to really get the Zircon, you've got to understand the thinking behind it. See, this isn't just about building a missile that goes incredibly fast. It's about finding a strategic shortcut, a way to challenge a superpower without having to match it dollar for dollar. It's a textbook case of what they call asymmetric warfare. And this slide right here gets to the absolute heart of that strategy. Look, Russia can't build aircraft carriers like the US can. Its entire military budget is just a tiny fraction of America's. So what do? Instead of going head-to-head, they pour money into cost-effective weapons, like the Zircon, designed for one specific job, to take out America's most powerful and, let's be honest, most expensive toys. The whole idea is to make a $13 billion warship vulnerable to a missile that cost a fraction of the price. So when the Kremlin first showed off the Zircon, the stats were, frankly, terrifying. They said it's powered by a scramjet engine. That's basically an engine that has to be moving at supersonic speeds just to work, allowing it to stay hypersonic for a long time. The official claims? A speed of Mach 9, a range as over 600 miles. This was presented as a revolutionary weapon that could, in theory, just blow past any defense system on the planet. And this quote just perfectly captures the shockwave that went through Western military circles. The early analysis was pretty grim. The mix of pure speed and the ability to maneuver seemed to create a weapon that was basically impossible to defend against. People were genuinely worried that this could make entire naval fleets obsolete overnight. The fear was absolutely real. But then, the war in Ukraine happened, and it gave the Zircon its first real-world test. And you know what? The story got a whole lot more complicated. This is where the propaganda met reality, and that myth of the unstoppable wonder weapon started to show some serious cracks. This was a huge moment. The weapon that was supposedly impossible to stop got stopped. Ukrainian forces, using these advanced American and European air defense systems, proved that you could shoot a Zircon down. And not just once. This showed there was a massive gap between what the Kremlin was claiming and how this missile actually performed in a real fight. And it's the real-world combat data from Ukraine that lets us cut through the noise and separate fact from fiction. So when they analyzed the wreckage, they found the peak speed wasn't Mach 9. It was closer to Mach 7.5. And here's the kicker. It slows down to Mach 4.5 right at the end of its flight. Now, that's still insanely fast, but it's not truly hypersonic anymore. And the range? Turns out it's probably closer to 435 miles, not the 620 they advertised. So why does it have to slow down? Well, it all boils down to some pretty basic physics. When you're moving at hypersonic speeds, you literally wrap yourself in a bubble of superheated ionized air. It's called a plasma sheath. The problem is, that plasma sheath is like a brick wall for radio waves, which means the missile's own radar seeker is completely blind. So to actually find and lock onto a moving ship, the Zircon has to hit the brakes and slow down to let that plasma fade. And that moment, right there, is when it becomes vulnerable. Okay, so this is the crucial part. Stopping these things isn't about some single magic bullet. It's about building a really smart, layered system that's designed to take advantage of that exact window of vulnerability. And the US response to this is something they call a kill chain. The whole strategy really breaks down into 3 steps. First, you have to detect the launch, no matter where on Earth it happens. Second, you have to track it constantly, even as it maneuvers. And third, you engage it with an interceptor missile. The thing is, if any single link in that chain breaks, the missile gets through. Now, this is the first and probably the most critical link in that whole chain, the Hypersonic and Ballistic Tracking Space Sensor, or HBTSS. Think of it as a dedicated constellation of satellites in low Earth orbit. Their only job is to provide a non-stop, fire control quality track of a missile from the second it launches to the second it hits. It is quite literally the unblinking eye in the sky that makes everything else possible.
All right, so once you can see and track the threat from space, what's next? Well, the final step is to actually take it out with a new generation of defensive weapons. And just like the threat is evolving, the shield is evolving right along with it.
The US is basically building a shield with multiple layers. For that final terminal phase, when the Zircon is slowing down, the Navy's SM-6 missile already has what they call a nascent capability. It can do the job, but the real game changer for the future is the Glide Phase Interceptor, or GPI. This is a brand new weapon being built from the ground up to hit these threats way up in the atmosphere during the middle of their flight, long before they even get close to their target.
And this timeline really shows you that building that shield is a serious, long-term strategic investment. I mean, the GPI program is a massive, multi-year, multi-billion-dollar project, and it's being developed with Japan. They don't expect it to be fully operational until well into the 2030s. This isn't some quick fix. This is a generational response to a generational threat.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, it's that the Zircon isn't some game-ending superweapon after all. Instead, what it really is just the next big move in a strategic chess match between offense and defense that's been going on for decades.
It's a cycle that just repeats itself over and over. Back in the Cold War, it was long-range bombers versus faster interceptor jets. Then it was stealthy cruise missiles versus advanced Aegis destroyers. And now it's hypersonic missiles versus space-based sensors and these next-gen interceptors. Every new weapon just forces the development of a new and better defense. It's a race that never really ends.
And that leaves us with this massive question for the future of naval power.
Okay, so the Zircon itself has been proven beatable, but the technology behind it, it's here to stay, and it's only going to get faster, stealthier, and more common. So does the rise of hypersonics mean a fundamental shift is coming? Does it mean that giants like the aircraft carrier are going to be pushed further and further from shore, maybe into irrelevance? Or will the defensive tech evolve fast enough to keep them in the fight? That right there is the multi-trillion-dollar question that's going to define the next era of global power.